you doing, Nick? It's been a while.
Good. Now that Charlie's gone. Oh, I mean, were you a fan of the Muppets, Lauren?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have a favorite Muppet?
Um, I d I like Beaker. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Beaker and the Swedish Chef,
Yes.
because they bring me joy. They
Yes.
both don't really
The
speak.
Swedish Chef.
What's
Fond memories.
I
Yes.
love that you love that.
Yeah.
What perplexed me as an adult watching the movies again, like Muppet Takes Manhattan, is what always got me about Kermit was when he was riding the bicycle in Central Park. And, like, and no one cares if they're like there's Muppets in their world. It's totally fine. He's got the leg strength to push that bike.
Yeah. Kermit, the Muppets, and Sesame Street, actually. I grew up, just thinking about it now, Saturday mornings, I think it was Sesame Street. And yeah, but they were such powerful programs, I think.
What book was it? Of course, I'm gonna forget what book it was. So they were taught. There was a book that I was reading, that was talking about the story of like the success of Sesame Street and how they then had to, and then I think it was Blue's Clues, one other thing that came on afterwards. But yeah, I have to find that book because it was fascinating how they changed the show. And like I grew up with like the original, like the 1970s Sesame Street, like, so the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like everybody can fill in the
Yeah.
blanks on that
Yeah.
one. But yeah, the phenomenal show. But the
Yeah.
Muppets, this was years ago. I don't even know why I was there. It was Orlando Universal Studios. I don't think they have it anymore, but they had a Muppet Show experience, let's call it. You walked in and you were in the backstage of the Muppet Show. Like they could recreated the entire like TV scene. And so that's where they held you. And then when the show was starting, you were let into the Grand Theater. And so the two old guys sitting on top of the balcony were there, and it was like this amazing 3D. I've never had so much joy at something like that. Like I just wanted to stay there and like live in the Muppet Show.
Yeah. 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 We went to a tour of which studio was it? Hollywood studios in Hollywood actually recently.
Mm.
And that was just such a fantastic experience. It was lovely because they did such a good job of the what I would think of as experience design. And I like to go to places like that where, they're not they're doing the sorts of things that I think we aspire to do in some ways, really give people a memorable experience. So yeah, that was cool.
How's all over there, anyways? How are you getting through
How's
with
life
all
here?
this? Yeah, how's all the you don't go to the big conferences either now, do you?
Um, I don't know how to answer that question. I mean, I think I know what you mean. I mean, I didn't go to Learning Technologies. I went to Charlie's boat party, actually.
Harley's
And so
boat
I
party.
don't go to the big conferences, yeah, but I was speaking at a conference. Do you know what I mean? What I'm trying to say in a roundabout way is I don't go to the big industry learning technologies conference unless somebody's invited me there for some reason. But I do go quite often to other conferences for organizations, so big
Yeah.
banks and Institute for Student Employers, and yeah, a whole series of people I've been, speaking at their conferences. So yeah, but the big industry ones, no. You don't go to them either.
I'm done. Yeah, I'm done. They don't value people like
Why is
us.
that? Why
So,
is that? Well,
because they don't value people like us. And they certainly don't want somebody like, me on their stages anymore telling everybody that, you don't know anything about these things. Our entire industry is failing right now, but AI will save you, so it's okay. The vendors are going to be great.
yeah. It is weird that, I mean, what would it take, do you think, for that to change? What
I
would
think it
you
is. I
like
think
to
it's
see?
happening. I think we're in the midst of it right now. I think the pendulum swung too fast and too hard to the direction of AI, and now that it's it's failing. Well, it's not. It's not that it's failing. It's just producing the same crap that everybody was producing faster, which is also in turn failing. And if I had to make a really good prediction, is that these companies are going to have to find budget again to bring people back, and then it's going to be a matter of do these people even want to come back?
Yeah. I saw somebody on TikTok, and I shared this at the ISE conference, describing it as companies are cheating with AI in front of their employees' faces. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
like,
that's quite a way
you
to
come
put
into
it.
work and it's like, we can't wait to get rid of you, because now we're looking forward to our relationship with AI, and we can't wait to break up with you. And they were saying what's going to happen is that they'll make people redundant, and then it won't work out with AI, and then, as you say, they'll have to kind of bring people back.
Well, there was a recent post that went up. It was a very intelligent one that called out all of these leaders who were very proud of all of the AI implementation they had done and how much cost savings they had done and all of these things. And this very articulate woman comes up and say, "Oh, that's great. Um, how do you expect anyone who doesn't have a job anymore to afford your services?"
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that's the other
So
side.
there's two really big things to worry about there. One is that leadership is one of the easiest things to replace with AI.
Mm,
I mean, it's such a dummy move because
mm,
actually the CEO would be the best thing to replace with AI, because a CEO is doing something which AI is best suited to: complex decision making, 24/7, lots of different data inputs. Human CEOs are generally pretty rubbish. They don't last very long. And it's like, as a leader, it's like, can you not clock that actually, of all the things that are done in your organization, probably leadership, which is like sending the right people the right emails, would be like the first thing you would give to AI. And the other thing is that I got sent a paper by Russ Hendy, a friend of mine, that was an academic proof that, even though, for exactly your argument, Lauren, is that even though organizations kind of at some level understand that if we replace everybody with AI, there won't be anybody to buy our products and services, it's not going to stop them doing it.
no,
Do you know what I mean? They're going to have
no.
to learn the hard way.
Well, again, we're dealing with the rule of the 2%, right? And that's, I think, that's this is only part of like the global issues, which is affecting all of us in one way, shape, or form. I lost out on a contract, and I was supposed to go over. I was actually supposed to be over in the UK right now, and it was for they're an all employee. They canceled it because the fuel price is going up so hard they couldn't bring the employees in.
Where are you broadcasting from, Lauren? Are you on a Mac, or you've got the iPhone headphones there?
Oh no, I'm on a Microsoft Surface. For some reason, I just stick to Microsoft. And I'm trying very hard, even though I'm in a soundproof booth, not to be incredibly irritated by two women who have decided to stand right outside this booth. So eventually, I'm going to open this door. My,
Go and shush them.
I don't shush. I just give them the look.
The
A look is
look.
usually enough. If if I were to stop what I was doing right now and open, I thought about this years ago when I saw the generations kind of coming up. I'm like, we need to bring back etiquette schools
Yeah.
and etiquette in the new way. I don't know if you have this issue over there, if it's as prevalent, but in Toronto, like we're a massive city, but for years now, people thinks it's perfectly socially acceptable to take personal phone calls, work phone calls on speakerphone in the middle of the train,
Yeah.
or like
That doesn't happen in the UK.
listen to
I don't
Yeah.
their
think.
listen to their whatever TikTok, Instagram, whatever it is. And does that not
That's
happen
the
there?
thing,
Maybe
yeah.
I should move.
No,
No, it
no.
does happen a bit.
Oh,
It's so bad. We should talk about this. It's so important. I mean, I think it's at risk of becoming a grumpy middle-aged people podcast, but I think
Too
that
late.
I notice it in so many ways. People in public places are not aware of personal space. Like, even things that I'm still old-fashioned. I hold doors open for people, and it's just bizarre. They don't use their indicators in cars as well. Completely
mm,
don't use rear view mirrors. And in business context as well, it's becoming chronic. I saw somebody say that they had like a new joiner who committed to delivering something, and then the deadline passed, and they were like, where is it? And they're like, oh yeah, I had a Pilates class or something, and I didn't do it in the end. And so even the very basic kind of business etiquette around,
mm.
when you say you're going to do something, you kind of do it, or at least you tell the person why you didn't do it. That's gone. So I think businesses are really going to have to do what you say, Lauren, which is train people on basic
Basic
etiquette.
etiquette. Even, I think at one point I put up a post from my own experiences, and then sort of opened the window for everybody else to climb through on, if you're a consultant in this world, if you're acting as a consultant, for some reason, people think that you are less than as far as communication. So, it's if just because you're not an internal employee, it doesn't mean that you don't have to communicate with the same amount of respect and timeliness that you would with somebody internally. We're still looking to work with one another. And I think hundreds of people who came onto that post to express that they had experienced something very similar to essentially either being ghosted or, getting into like, he's not that into you sort of relationship with a mentor. And I think it was in the very sensitive state of the world right now. We need to exude a little bit more etiquette and definitely a lot more kindness.
Why do you think that's happening, Charlie, Lauren? Are we seeing this, if we are, this decline in etiquette?
Do you want to take a stab, Charlie?
Social media, it's always to blame for.
There is a
Well,
correlation.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think my moan. I'm just going to back Lauren's moaning up with the ghosting thing. It's just very strange to me that you can have a conversation where you're like, "Cool, we want to do some work together. I'll get back in touch in the next week or so." Great. You don't hear anything. You send an email saying what's going on. And these are nice people who I know from the past. These aren't people that are like
Yeah.
randomers, and they just basically they'll only communicate with you when they've got something to say that's kind of an update. Otherwise, they just ignore you. I just find that very odd. But maybe I've just been out of the corporate world too long,
I think that, Nick, I think there is a correlation to the means in which we communicated started to change drastically as the technology advanced, right? So we grew up in a generation where we didn't have a moving, walking computer with us all the time. I grew up in a generation that I had a telephone attached to a wall. If
Good
I
times.
missed a call, I probably didn't know. There was a lot more patience in the world, a lot more patience. And as the world started speeding up and as technology allowed us to communicate a lot more efficiently, in one means, and then anxiety writing in the other, it really did start to change. So those who I think were not born into the world of a mobile computer and a means to communicate with somebody anytime at any and then setting that expectation of, well, I can see that you read my message, but you haven't written me back. We didn't grow up like that. So there's a very
Yeah.
big difference between the generations and communication styles. But what you were saying before, Nick, the spatial awareness as well, that one perplexes me. That one perplexes me. Is
Yeah.
There's just less space now, though.
is
You
there?
go, you go on the tube in London.
Hmm.
There's can't get on without having someone's elbow in your face or whatnot.
There's some exceptions
Um,
to the rule. I lived in Tokyo for 5 years. Like it's very
oh, right,
very
yeah.
intimate on
What
a
was that
train in
like?
rush hour in Tokyo.
Yeah, like carrying people above your head.
I remember when I was in BP, actually, having a chat with my dad about emails, and he ran his own business for a while. And he said, "Well, how many emails do you get a day?" And I would say about 100. He said, 100? How do you answer 100 emails? And his generation was one where you'd open the mail in the morning and you might get, 5 or 6 pieces of correspondence. And now I look back on 100 and I think, it's just nuts. I might get 100 emails. I might get 15 LinkedIn messages, probably more, and then stuff on Substack, stuff on
Oh
TikTok,
gosh, yeah.
and stuff on WhatsApp. I might get 20 different messages on WhatsApp, and it's like, I don't. So I think I would be inclined to think part of it is just people are ghosting because they're overwhelmed. It's like, I just can't.
Mm,
I can only respond to like a percentage of the messages that I get coming in.
yeah, give many people the benefit of the doubt, I suppose.
Maybe I
So
always try
when
to.
did humanity peak then? 'Cause we've had this is probably the fourth conversation we've had in a row on this podcast where we were like, "Oh, this is all going terribly wrong, and AI is going to kill us all," and blah blah blah. And when you talk about the times we used to open a single letter that was crafted by hand by a friend, and you get to
Those
craft
days.
a letter back, and you feel the warmth and love. When was that? When was that? Was it like
What do you think, Lauren?
post-war 60s? Is that what
My
do you think?
gosh, I don't know. I mean,
Is it also a terrible time for many portions of our society as well? So
I don't know. I mean, I was like a youth, a child of the '80s, and I think that was a pretty, bitchin' decade as far as, the technology hadn't really emerged yet. And so I don't know. I think, I'm gonna shed a little bit of light on this, AI doom and gloom, which is I think what's happening right now is actually to the benefit of humanity because they're starting to see, I think, I hope, I that they're starting to see how much they are offloading their own human capability. And because it's been such a stark contrast. It's such a stark contrast. And I know the research is definitely coming through now as far as the correlation to when technologies entered the classroom and versus the cognitive decline essentially of the generations that came afterwards. I mean, the evidence is striking. And I think that that alone might be enough to sort of swing the pendulum back the other way to sort of on us and says, what makes us uniquely human? And what are my thoughts? How do I manage my thought processes? Like, what is creativity? What is, decision making, goal setting, all of that from the inside lens versus it being given to me versus me coming up with that, with my own human brain or just, talking to other humans like this.
Well, I mean, I'm with you on the 80s. I think we're the Stranger Things generation. I remember it was not that different. I rode around the neighborhood on bikes with my best friends. We camped out in places, and if you wanted to learn something, you had to go to the library. But it's just nostalgia. But the 80s music was the best. But I wanted to ask you, Lauren, then what do you think along those lines then you will be employed to do in the future as that kind of cognitive outsourcing really starts to sort of hit home? What do you think it is that you will have to offer as a professional?
I think it's what I'm offering right now. Nick, we've known each other for a long time, known of each other's work for a very long time, and we've shared some of the similar frustrations when it's come to an entire learning industry that, can we take a step back and recognize maybe we didn't really know what we were doing in the first place because no one taught us. Right now, where I'm seeing a lot of traction are with some of these teams, these learning and development teams, and the leaders coming to me and saying, we know that we can do better. We know that we can do better because we see that the results aren't being indicative of a human who's performing and taking what we've designed, putting all those hours that we've spent with the SMEs and done our analysis and then gone into design and then implemented and facilitated across the organization, but they're not seeing the true transformation that they've been wanting to see. And taking that step back and recognizing that their learning is something that we are born and designed to do. If it's just it's inherent. That doesn't mean that we have good methodology or strategy because of the behaviors and the habits that we cultivated over, most of us would have been 20 plus years in some formalized educational setting. So these current foundational human skills. I taught my class yesterday, and it was the whole class was on brain function and metacognition. Let's break down what's going on in the brain when it comes to your executive function. Let's look at the prefrontal cortex and all the beautiful different areas of this one piece of brain and how it allows one part is sort of detecting errors for you. And the other one is looking at something going, oh, something's not quite right over there. I need to shift my strategy. And then how do we use that knowledge to become more consciously aware of our own thought processes so that, the technology is not going anywhere at this point. We know that. But can we enhance our human capabilities so that we have more decision and authority in the moment before an hour has gone by and you're ready to punch your computer screen because you've just been prompting for the last hour, not getting the answer that you wanted. So that's where I think that
Yeah.
it's going. I'm hoping that it's going is that let's turn the lens back on us.
Yeah. What do you think, Charlie?
Mm, I think it's about value. It's about money and it's about value. So ultimately, what is in a capitalist system that we live in, what is it that other human beings are going to value about other human beings? If we're talking strictly about business, and we've talked about handmade pottery quite a lot, Nick. I think that's maybe part of the answer. But we had a conversation recently around the intrinsic value of human interaction, for example. And I think your sort of slightly dystopian view was that's probably replaceable in the next, I don't know, 10 years. because, as you said, we might be having this conversation now, and both of you might be AI, or I might be an AI, and I might be having dinner with my kids. So um, I don't know. I think Lawrence, I like the idea. I'm not sure whether or not human beings are too greedy at the end of the day. And yeah, I think something might have to shift in not just in the work context, but societal context for it to kind of level itself out in some way. Um, I heard the term the other day, techno feudalism,
Mm.
um, which was on, I think it was the Russ's Politics podcast, about this idea that people like Jeff Bezos essentially are feudal lords because they don't actually produce anything. They have quote unquote a marketplace, but it's not a marketplace. It's more like a Soviet era communist regime, and they take 40% of all production. So it's, yeah, I think that's the scary part of it, which is some of these forces in the system that are so powerful. It's hard to see how we break away from that and how the people rise up and win the day at the end without some kind of massive shift.
I think that will be, as Lauren's suggesting, I think we'll see this model where life becomes, I don't know, you're surrounded by services which are kind of broadly sycophantic in one way or another. And there's lots of people who head to the bottom and end up basically on the sofa in their slippers, living a very a leveled life. In a sense, this is what I really worry about, is that many people have this experience where during COVID, it just seems like that all those years kind of evaporated. And my suspicion is it's because it's being together that creates those spikes in your experience of doing those things. And this digital life is it's like a desert. And so I think people will be confined to this rather insipid kind of desert existence. But I think you're right, Lauren, that some people will make a conscious decision to head in the other direction, will go outside, will embrace experience, will challenge themselves and push themselves. And I think that will give us more sharper divides between, in a sense, kind of the haves and the have-nots when it comes not to money, but the cognitive capability, because those people who just settle into outsourcing everything to AI will become very incapable people. And I think those people who make a conscious decision to push themselves and to challenge themselves will be, light years ahead of everybody else.
We can hope. I think I like to believe, I mean, in my world, the value of contrast is very powerful, to see things through the lens of contrast. And so that's the way that I choose to see it, is that you're going to have a very strong group of people who are very tech driven, and that's totally fine. Um, and some of those people, they don't leave their homes. They just don't. But there's a stark contrast to those of us who will still smile at a stranger on the sidewalk, or just stop and give them a compliment, um, and and engage in that. And I find more and more that was very natural for me. Anyways, I like just I'm very curious about humans, just in a general sense, just from a young age, and just being a traveler, and obviously the work that we do, we're constantly interacting with new humans. But, the human behavior aspect of it is something that I'm very interested in, and when you see how how it not only impacts you to have a micro engagement with somebody, but it impacts them as well. It's good feeling. It's good feeling, and I think that, I could be wrong, a colleague and a very good friend of mine, Dr. Ben Ryan, he wrote a book about this called Why Brains Need Friends. It's an exceptional book that not only synthesized the neuroscience and the cognitive science behind how the brain systems work, and what it means when we interact with one another, and even dogs, which is great. Um, but we have, and I don't know if this was pre-pandemic as well, but definitely post-pandemic, there's a lot of lonely people out there in this world. And I think we can see the correlation, again, if we circle back to when technology allowed us, even when we had messenger systems on, MSN Messenger, or whatever the first messaging systems were, it allowed us to take a step away and further back from just randomly talking to people, because I didn't have to see you. I didn't have to like look at you physically anymore. I could be anyone, you could be anyone. And then that social anxiety sort of started climbing and climbing. So by the point, I remember the last corporate job I had, we had 100 new grads coming through to go through training. And this was the first time I realized the damage that had been done to the generations as far as anxiety communication, because they all got in and it was 7 weeks worth of training. And we got to the part where they had to do a project and call a client to understand what the client needs were. These were nonprofits. And they were so anxious at the thought of calling and interacting with a stranger. And I was like, "Oh my god," and so we had to contextualize this and sort of do like a behavioral reframing for them that said, "Hey, have you ever gone to a hotel before?" They're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Did you know the person at the checkout counter? Like, when you got there, did you know them? No, but you spoke to them, right? Have you ordered food before?" And there was something that when we got into a higher stakes or what they perceived to be a higher stakes environment, oh my God, it's a client if I mess up, like all of this anxiety then came flushing through and they didn't know how to communicate when all they really need to think about is you had a need when you got to the hotel, right? You needed to check in. You need to understand that process and the procedure. These people are the same. They want to help you and you want to help them. But we've gotten further away from that.
There is, I think you're right, and at the risk of making it darker, as per Charlie's accusation, and Charlie's absolutely right. I think it comes back to the very beginning of this conversation where it's like, why are people like this? I was listening to Making Sense with Sam Harris, and they were talking about a phenomenon that would be familiar to many of us, which is people are rude to chatbots. They're rude because they don't feel they need to be nice. And technically they don't. And some people will argue it burns energy unnecessarily. But the point that Sam and Tristan Harris were saying is, what does that train young people to do if much of their interaction is with AIs and they learn that they can just be this very
Mm,
directive, unempathetic? What then happens when they go out and they interact with other people? Either they're very anxious, as you say, or they're just very rude and inconsiderate. And I wondered, I was going to ask if you'd seen Blade Runner, the new one, the 2049 with Ryan Gosling, if you'd seen that movie.
I have not, but I've heard a lot about that and the Project Hail Mary, which I would very much like to see.
Yeah, I loved Hail Mary. In 2049, he acts beautifully in both, but he plays this kind of cyborg, I guess. But he knows that he's not human, and he falls in love with Joy, and Joy is this virtual AI character. And what struck me as interesting philosophically about it is, and also I think it's quite prescient, that he knows it's AI, but he still falls in love with it. Do you know what I mean? It's like people think, no, people won't be fooled by these things. I think people are
Yes.
already being
Oh,
fooled
yeah.
by them. I wonder what your take, Charlie, was on that relationship.
Well, well, I don't want to say that it's an age thing, but I'm getting bombarded with uh, adverts for AI companions,
Wow.
almost like maybe 3 or 4 a day on my feeds, and some of it is it's along the lines that the adverts go something along the lines of, Are you feeling ignored? Do you feel like you need a positive energy in your life? Download this and design your perfect girlfriend and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah,
I have a girlfriend slash wife already and children. I don't have any plans to download an AI girlfriend, but
yeah,
there's, I can see the appeal for someone who is feeling like, to your point, Lauren, who is feeling lonely and isolated, um, having that kind of companionship in a very realistic, simulated situation. So yeah, it looks pretty bleak to me at the moment, to be honest.
There's hope.
I think, yeah.
I'm gonna keep. I'm just gonna.
Please,
I gotta keep
please
saying this.
extract some hope from the conversation,
You
Lauren.
know, I live in Toronto. Toronto's one of the biggest cities in the world globally. This city was devastated, devastated. We never recovered properly from the pandemic when it came to our mental health problems. And actually, everything just escalated and got significantly worse. And of recent, I've been seeing more and more events pop up and more not restaurants, but like these boutique bars, if you will, where it's just come and listen or come and sit and read your book. And there's no technology. And these are now, we're creating these spaces where these social interactions can happen. My fear about the people like what you just described with who are being fed these, these, hey, if you're lonelies, my fear is that we're gonna lose them. We're not gonna know where they are, how to reach them on this level. When those AIs should really be saying, if you're lonely and you need support, here's an age create an agent which gives you all of the community resources around you, or just, hey, people are going through the same things, anything that just brings a human into that loop. But I also think that the generation that went through the pandemic, that it was mostly, I think, like the 13 to 18-year-olds who missed out big time on socializing, and their siblings, their younger siblings, saw the impacts and the effects that it had on them. And I think that generation are also the ones who are going like, we don't want these things with us all the time anymore. We saw what it did to them. We don't
Mm.
want that to happen to us. So I really do believe that we're not on a full pendulum swing, but I do think through the lens of contrast, and I think that there is going to be a percentage of those people who look at that world and go, that's not for me. That's just not for me, which is why um, I embrace AI as far as what it can do from a procedural act. But until my laptop or my phone sheds a tear or snorts when it laughs, I'd much rather do this and have the humans involved and create those spaces for it.
There is an irony that none of us are actually in the same
I know,
room, and
I
we
know,
are talking.
I know
I know what you mean.
the brilliance of technology, though, but I haven't created an avatar for. I'm me, I'm me, like I'm not AI, like you said. Any one of us at this point could be an AI version of us showing up like, hey, do this interview for me. Let me upload who you're speaking with and what the potential topics might be. Go,
Yeah.
go.
Well, this is the reason why we've done the podcast. Part of the reason, I guess, the podcast is shaped up as it is, which is we've just kept it about as informal as it's possible to be, like, while still hopefully turning up on time with working technology. Because I think that, to your point as well, I think it would be very easy to replicate a lot of thought leadership conversations um, using an AI. And I think that's what I'm seeing on LinkedIn as well, is just kind of overwhelming amounts of thought leadership. It's just basically the AI regurgitating the same insight over and over again. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
also think, I mean, podcasts, I've never been a big fan. I think there should be fewer men with microphones. And I think for some of them, it's just kind of, and I might be guilty of this on occasion, itching to express their kind of ego into cyberspace. But I also think that commercialization has really, I mean, the Stephen Bartlett Diary of a CEO, the extent to which I think that is just pushing popular, nonsense and enabling people to kind of sell their books or, sell their dodgy products. I don't know. I'm really switched off by that. I think that also troubles me as well. And it's very hard to pick those two things apart because if you're a content producer in that sense, that's how you make your money. So I'm a content producer on TikTok. I make zero money from it. The simple reason that I don't promote any products. But I think once somebody starts to promote a product, which often they have to do because they don't have in the luxury position that I am of having, an income from the work I do, then all of a sudden it's like, wow, now they're just flogging something.
I mean, it does. You don't have to even go to that scale. Look at the internals of the learning and development industry. Everybody and their mother now has a book for some reason, like And I have a book. 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 Hey, who doesn't have a book at this point? And no one's making any money off of it. Well, maybe the associations are who are publishing them, but
Yes.
and
Yeah.
and I love our friends who have gone into this world, and there are some of them who have genuinely put out some beautiful content out there, and then there's some people who have used it just to purely stroke their own ego
Yeah.
and get on stages and just really self-promote, and you can see the division of those who are here to serve versus who are here to serve themselves. And
Yeah.
writing a book is nowadays, I think, again, people are now using AI so much in that process. Like, how are you all writing these books so quickly?
Yeah. I kind of think books are dead, aren't they? Because number one, nobody's got the patience to read them, and number two, I saw somebody that this was a case study of somebody that they're publishing 90 something books a day onto Amazon. It's like, how the hell are you going to compete with that? But I also think what you touched on there, Lauren, was really interesting. This whole thing about conferences and what's going on there, because I think that I have a tendency to project in my criticism, and what I mean by that is because I'm not a very social person, I kind of suffer a degree of social anxiety. I find it quite, complex. I always worry about doing the right thing and saying the right thing in, chitty chat situations. Um, I go to those sorts of events or participate in what I do like I do now because the exchange of ideas, for me, it's about the thinking and the ideas. But I respect the fact that for a lot of people, the ideas are less important than the connections and the socialization and so on. And so I understand that for many conferences, there is a big degree to which it feels a little bit like school, like a game that I don't know how to play because it's about popularity and, it's just socializing. And I guess I don't want to criticize that just because that's not me. Do you know what I mean?
No, I do, but I mean, the what is presented to us, we were talking before, like neither one of us really go to those big conferences anymore, but when everybody else does, and what you see leading up to and then going into and then afterwards, no one else is really presenting them in a way that's conducive to me actually wanting to be there, because all I'm seeing online is like, look who I saw and this is my selfie. I'm like, oh my God, I was so excited. Here are my like 5 takeaways that I'm never going to remember again from this very moment in this day. And they are every type of offensive to the brain itself, every type, and the body, if we're being truthful. 2 to 3 days,
Yeah.
stale air, poor lighting, lack of hydration, thousands of people. You're socially engaged on. I think it's too much.
Yeah, I have to agree. So 100% with that because I think there's always been a terrible irony about the learning conferences is that they mirror the central critique of learning itself, which is you go there for the networking and you remember nothing of what you heard. And it's like, why are we still modeling that activity? And if you actually go and you listen to conference speeches, it's sage on the stage, and very little of it is experiential. And I think every so often I see somebody who's trying to do something experiential, and I love them for it. But by and large, the format has descended in the direction of education, and you
Mm,
just end up with rows of people sitting in seats while somebody lectures them. And I think, wow, are we still doing that? Isn't this ridiculous yet? And everybody says, oh yeah, the best thing about it was meeting up with old friends, exactly as you say. And it's like, well, why wouldn't you structure it around that then? If
right.
it is like a get together, let's make it a great get together. Let's make it
Exactly.
the best get together that you can remember for 20 years. Not just like, oh, let's kind of all sit in rows and hear somebody, bang on about their pet topic.
If they even go at this point. I think what flabbergasts me the most about this is that, one of the last big conferences that I was at, I think that was the last time I was ever gonna go to one of them. I was doing a little sort of informalized survey when I was speaking to random people, and I ascertained that the average cost for one participant to be there for the 2 to 3 days was at minimum $3,500 US and upwards of $5,000 to $7,000 US,
Yeah.
which is, when you think about, I know the cost of my programs, probably roughly around the same as your programs that we deliver, what you would get for that amount of money to sit in a room and learn with yourself or with me and Charlie, if you teach as well, for not a half an hour to an hour, but for days, days. The budget that goes
Yeah.
around these things is absolutely like ridiculous. And for what outcome? Come back and tell me about what report. And it's that, to me, that's an organizational flaw. Is
Mm.
why are you spending $5,000 where your employee is going to come back exhausted, absolutely burnt out, and just completely depleted, 3 days to 4 days behind their work now. So now they're even more stressed out trying to catch up with that. Oh, you need them to do a training module because there's some compliance issue? Okay, let's add that to that as well. They're so offensive, where I like to see you've got the smaller like, I'm not sure if we can even call it let's call it a learning gathering, if you will,
Mm.
that are happening around the world, and whether that's the offbeat community, the L&D Shakers, coming up in London at the end of the month, Tom McDowell and LDTX. I'm so upset I'm
Yeah.
not going to be at that one because it's such a beautiful, intimate 100 people. and
Yeah, see,
phenomenal
I was gonna
speakers.
ask you that, what you thought was good, and I have a similar feeling. I mean, I went to Charlie's boat party, and I loved that. It was a great vibe. Martin Cousins, I think, has been organising an unconference and in pubs, and that I think is a beautiful event. And I think Ben Gallagher in rehearsal did something which was like an unconference. And I think you're right. I think the focus shifts and the format shifts towards it's more peer to peer.
So much better. So much better. I attended the Offbeat Sparks was held in Toronto last month, and I was just going as an attendee because I was just like, oh, this is I spoke at the one in London when I was there a couple of years ago, and so I was just going to this one as attendee because I knew it was going to be no more than 80 people. It's going to be like quick fire talks, like great opportunity to like just see what's happening in my own backyard. A speaker backed out, so I did wind up, but it was so good. And then like I said, Tom McDowell's doing his LDTX in London, not is it London or Birmingham? Maybe it's Birmingham, and 100 people. And he has got some phenomenal. I'm seriously to this moment. I mean, it's in a couple of weeks. I'm like, can I just jump on a flight and go? Because it's a well curated day of excellent topics with excellent speakers, zero vendors, no selling, just the intimate community. And I think, you know, if we were to decentralize these mega conferences and use those mega conferences just as a vendor conference, that's what they are anyways. Just have a big vendor conference once a year, and if you need to go and look for a solution, then go. That's where you can go. But everything else, how about some smaller road shows? How about Charlie has another boat party? Because that sounds like a blast. I
Well,
want to be there.
that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, you've made it very much about scale, and I think that's a big part of it. But I was just thinking back, Freshers' Fair. Freshers' Fair was a pretty cool event, and I think it had that vendor kind of feel to it. There were stalls that you could sort of tour, but it was just so much more fun, and so much more lively, and I think people were a bit more relaxed. But no, Charlie, I noticed you've been quite quiet. What's your take?
I guess what's going through my head is I completely agree with you, but at the same time, it's still a format that people are spending that amount of money on. So there's something about the framing of those events that is delivering a value that's probably beyond, let's say, the utility of them. It might be the permission around the conference, and what it is more what it represents and what it actually gives you. Maybe it's not caught up.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, there's something about the format of, because I was at Learning Tech and then
Mm,
World of Learning, being like a space where basically it's like I mean, I'm, as a vendor, let's say, for me, it's about how many people can I bump into as I would do a circuit of it. I just keep walking around and I meet loads of people that I know, and, one work that way just by bumping into somebody, to going into one of the rooms and listening to someone sort of talk at me for half an hour or whatever it is. I can play on my phone if I want. I can tune in and out if
yeah.
they're saying something particularly interesting. It's more about having the dedicated time, I think, in those contexts, which I don't usually give myself.
Mm,
So I strongly agree that the smaller events tend to be more intimate, but I'm still seeing the set kind of versions of the same format play out in
yeah.
those contexts. The only way I get around that is basically just by saying, this is a party. We're going to have a party. If you want to come and drink and have a good time, we've got a band and we've got, cocktails and whatnot. So I'd be doing lots of those, but people also don't want too much of that either. So yeah, I think it's interesting.
You
Will
know,
you
I,
run your own event, Lauren?
pardon me?
Will you run your own event, do you think?
So funny that you asked this. So I've got to go over to Ireland for a wedding this August. And, my brain goes, I haven't been back over in London or anywhere. Like it's been 2 years since I've been around. There's a lot of people I want to see. And I'm like, oh, well, could I do a talk? Could I do something or whatever? I reached out to a bunch of people and I'm like, I could get a corporate sponsor. I could do this. Or I could just find a park and say, bring a blanket and come sit and let's talk and not make it so formalized and not, I started reaching out to people. I'm like, oh, forget it. Like it's August. surely one day in the summer it won't rain in England. So like we'll we can do
That
some.
was your first mistake.
Well, I'll have a backup or a big tent or something. But
Yeah.
the one I haven't thrown my own event in quite some time. But the first one that I did, it was in a small intimate theater space, and it was also a studio for bands to rehearse. So I brought a live band in with me, and I integrated the band into the talk I was doing as part of memory demonstration experiments, and it was basically turned into like a live band karaoke on stage, and creating and cultivating. And there wasn't that many people. I think there was maybe 50, 60 tops. But it was such a unique experience. And I love creating those, like it's one thing to design learning. Back in the day before I was the learning scientist I am today, I was like, event management, really cool, large concerts and festivals in North America.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, wow, that's awesome. Then eventually, got into the conference scene and just meeting management. And now fast forward to who I am and what I do now. I love creating these spaces and these events, even my keynotes, any of the talks that I do, everything is so curated around the brain and how to activate that in such a way that it's not just a fond memory, it's the start of a more conclusive memory for you to take away, even further. And so, yeah, I would love to create more events and do more of that myself. For now, I use the stage as my creative outlet. Actually, Nick, you would appreciate this. I know that we grew up in different countries, but The Price is Right was like a big show in North America when I was growing up. Like if you were sick and if you were sick at home, you were watching The Price is Right at 10 o'clock in the morning. And
Yeah.
I was asked to deliver a keynote last year. And I said, okay, tell me, like, give me a sense of the demographics of the audience. Like, let's have some fun. And I'm like, oh, I've got it. And my brain goes, I want to live out my own childhood dream of being on The Price is Right. And so I curated a keynote that was basically 70s 19, in The Price is Right, where and thank God for the production team being as great as they were, because they just let me get away with it. They were in on this with me every step of the way. So, instead of coming up from the side stage or the back of the stage, I was planted in the audience, ready to like hear my name. So they come on down. And then the music started. I was living my best 10-year-old life when the music of The Price is Right started. But everybody else all of a sudden came into that journey, into that world. And I came up with my own, I came up with my own game. And oh, you'll love this one. I got to the conference, to the hotel the day before, and I was just randomly looking for who was wearing a badge, who was part of the conference. So I would just stop and say, hi, blah, blah. And it's like, hey, if I needed someone to come up on stage with me as a volunteer, would you be okay with that? So I asked 5 people, but nobody knew who was going to get called the day of. So it was a true like moment of like they're sitting in anticipation, not knowing if it's them, and then the gentleman whose name did get called was like that beautiful memory. Like it's like, oh my God, it's me, and everyone's like clapping in the audience, and it was just
I'm
that.
quite inspired by that. A couple of things come to mind. One was, didn't you have an experience, Charlie, where you were going to speak at a conference and ended up talking about being a DJ instead because it was something you were passionate about? Or did I just imagine that?
No, so that was the one where you sent me to can't remember which country, in Prague maybe, to talk at the Future of Workplaces conference.
Mm.
And my assumption, and I think probably yours, was it was about, the future of work. Turns out it was about actual workplaces. So all the other talks were about architecture.
Right.
And I went on last. So everyone had done their bit and then I did mine. But yeah, I took your very good presentation and I adapted it for my own
Yeah, good for you.
experience.
But are you a
It
DJ?
worked. No, not really. I mean,
He
I
is.
dab.
He's a modest DJ, DJ modest. Yeah, DJ grammar costs nothing, as I recall. But I was quite inspired by something you said in passing, which is the karaoke bit, which is, why are we not doing L&D's Got Talent? I was in Bangalore last year. I was delivering a program and they said, oh, you might have a few dropouts because we've got it was an insurance company, our company's got talent. And They were just having people, anyone who can sing, can dance, can do something, juggle, whatever. I would watch that at a conference if there was a space for people to get up and, do a short, 5 minutes of stand-up comedy
Mm.
or something. I think we're a very talented bunch, and I would love for there to be a space where L&D people could just kind of, get up and share their talents
We
for
could
the,
create them,
yeah, well,
like
yeah,
I think, if you're bold enough um to take chances, and I take a lot of chances in some of these things, and it's usually because I want to see my own creations come to life, and I'm willing to risk it on stage in front of how many of thousands of people for failure. But I need to know. um 2 years in a row I went to Devlin and spoke on one of the stages there for with one of the vendors, and their stages were themed. So the first year it was an 80s theme, so I embedded all of the 80s that I could possibly embed. And then the next year, this was last year, they were like, okay, we're going to do a 90s theme this year. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be fantastic. So I decided, first, I'm in my full Adidas tracksuit, like as you would have been back in the 90s. And I'm like, there's nothing better than a little bit of like throwback nostalgia music. So again, using integration of the music
mm,
in the memory sequence. So I basically turned that room into a crazy karaoke party. But the last song that you could see that was in the videos were up, everything was up, was Vanilla Ice, Ice Ice Baby. And I said, if anyone wants to come on this stage, if you can do
yeah,
this, and I'll gift you a t-shirt, whatever it was. I'm like, come on. And this man comes on stage and he just drops it. Like he just like spits out that he's spitting out the rap. I'm hip hop dancing on the stage beside him. The entire room is going absolutely bananas. We got in so much trouble from the room next door. They're like, what the hell's going on in there? I'm
yeah,
like, ask for forgiveness, not permission. But we can, though, that talent, like you said, is we can create a space for that to happen within the work that we do as well, and for these talents to come out. And I think when people see that and see that there's that space, it gives them permission to want to participate as
I
well.
think so. I think
Yeah,
a bit of troublemaking goes a long way, because I think a lot of what we have to do in L&D is a bit of troublemaking, I think. I'm gonna have to drop. I've actually got another call. Can you believe it? I've got a client who's also in the US, but, I've loved this
Canada,
conversation.
easy now.
No, sorry. Yes, sorry. Absolutely right. Yeah, sorry.
Oh no, very long way to end the
Yeah.
Well,
podcast.
this has been
Have you got
delightful.
any? Yeah, it's really nice to meet you, Lauren. We didn't really do introductions, but hi,
We're
I'm
friends
Charlie.
now. Yeah, we're friends now.
It's all good.
Yeah.
Have you got any pluggables to plug? Anything you want to shout out before you go?
I don't feel like plugging anything here. Just a message, just to remember how remarkable you are, you, the human being with the 3 pounds of brain that you carry up.
At
Kudos.
least for now.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Good to
Good to
see
see
you,
you.
Nick. All right.
Bye for
Bye
now.
for now.